Evening, y'all. How is it going? Long time no lockdown chat. We are back. As usual, joined with my notorious co-host. You might remember him. Little guy from Draconem Media. Guy called Alec Larson. How are you doing, man?
Good, man. I'm quite excited for this session. Do you want me to introduce it, or do you want to discuss the format first? It's up to you.
Well, yeah, I love how open-ended this chat is. We're shaking this up a little bit this week, as you guys can see. It's just myself and Alec. We forgot, or should I say, we omitted the idea of doing a bit of a review of the last bands that have released in the last 6 months. So Alec came up with a cool idea of kind of cherry picking a few choice singles that may have come out that maybe on an album or coming out on a forthcoming album. But yeah, pretty much with that in mind, Alec, do you want to kind of break down how you came up with all of this?
So I think they may have been our last guests, the guys from HeavyHops. I think that was the last chat we did with guests. And
It was.
they talked to us about their vast knowledge of African metal. And we've obviously during this lockdown been prioritizing South African metal, barring the few international guests that we had, just to like get some variety. And we've kind of started to have repeat guests because there are a lot of South African bands, and I'm not saying we've covered them all, but we've covered those that are in our radar. So we're looking probably broader going forward, but both of us are kind of burnt out. So we wanted to just get exposure to some new music. And we'll do this for a little while. We don't know how long going forward, but the idea is we want to get exposure to some new music, expand the horizons from South Africa all the way up to Egypt. And there's so much great music here in South Africa, but also in Africa itself. I think being a war-torn, violent continent has served for very good inspiration for the dark music that we like. So yeah, we're just going to look at some singles, like Lyle said. These were sort of gleamed from both African metal top 20s, as well as the HeavyHops. So thanks to those guys for the good work they do, because it actually gives us something to look at, review, and actually enjoy, because we're fans at heart. That's why we do this. It's not like it's bringing in the Benjamins. So we're doing this because we love the genre of music.
Exactly. And yeah, shout out to the guys of HeavyHops. Arno and the gang have been kicking ass and giving us a huge database to kind of delve into. We're barely going to skim the surface, but we're going to give it a go. And yeah, I guess without any more wasting of the words, let's dive right into it then. Alec, what do you say?
Yeah, I think what we're going to do how we're going to do it, I'm just going to talk about the band a little bit, basically my sort of perception, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll like give where they're from and the song name. So we're going to start off up north with a band called Riverwood, and they recently released a music video that was really well done, and 8 minutes of goodness, called Dying Light. They're a band from Egypt, and yeah, just some of my thoughts is they had really epic, clean vocals. It wasn't boy bandy at all. It was like proper melodeath, clean vocals. And I actually did prefer the harsh vocals, even though the split was like maybe 70% clean, 30 harsh. I really loved the harsh vocals. And my sort of thoughts are like, if Winter Sun was from Egypt instead of Finland, like that's what they would sound like. And yeah, high quality stuff. I don't know what you think.
Well, yeah, just gonna like jot off from a few little homework notes that I took down on it. But yeah, as you said, it was a single from their album Shadows and Flames, was released 5th of November last year. And yeah, it's they call themselves like melodic folk metal, and I guess that kind of is a good way to interpret it, because they do bring in almost that Egyptian tone to the music. The vocalist kind of reminds me a little bit of a Serge Tankian from System of a Down, and almost that the twang of how he leads the notes into each sentence. It's obviously like the accent that goes with it, but it works really well. I actually had it at 40% on the clean to harsh vocals. But yeah, like it's definitely an epic listen. Production is huge. The keyboard orchestral sounds that they add in add a great dynamic, almost like a Children of Bodom type in the front type of mix from it. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a bit of an intense listen. Obviously not harsh on the ears in any which way. You can tell they're very virtuoso artists in their style. You can hear it in their solo work and all of that. I think the track could have been ended at about 2 or 3 points within it. But that being said, each point in the track guiding you to that almost 9-minute stop it keeps your interest. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Dying Light from Riverwood in Egypt. So yeah, definitely a good one to kick it off. A long one, but a good one.
Yeah, definitely. Sticking around in Egypt, we're going to go to a band, and I'm sorry if I butcher your pronunciation, but if you're going to name your band funnily, that's what happens. And I mean, I do the same thing. So this is Euresis. Into the Depths of the Sepulchre. They're also from Egypt. I would say they're frenetic symphonic black metal. It's like a huge wall of sound. I really like the vocals, the instrumentation. Production was reasonable. The only sort of problem I really had was with the drums. They were a little muddy in places, the bass drums especially, and some of the snare hits as well. But I mean, overall, it's still a quality release, you know. I very few complaints.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, this compared to Riverwood, very different, way more black metal. Although similar to Riverwood, you can definitely tell that there is an Egyptian tone to the music in just some of the guitar work that they do, which is very different with the keyboard work that is used with the other band. Euresis, which is the way I've been pronouncing it, so also apologies if I butchered it. I actually looked up what the term means, and their album actually is called Slithering Through Ancient Catacombs. And what Euresis actually is an ancient Egypt headdress that was worn by divinities and royal dignitaries in Egypt. So the snake, the metaphor and the whole tone, it definitely kind of fits in with it. So yeah, very solid mix in my opinion. The guitars and the vocals especially sit very well. Reminds me a lot of like a Marduk or Watain, but without the super clean production on that almost dark type sound. But yeah, catchy hooks, great mid-range level from the guys. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward, simple listen in 4.5 minutes. So I can't really fault it. Very different from the other band that we just mentioned, Riverwood, but equally killer. Very, very fun if you're into that more brutal wall of sound, black metal sound. So yeah, Euresis, whatever. Our apologies. Keep rocking, guys. So yeah, next one. How are we doing now? Oh, wait, let me kick this one off. Actually, seeing that this kind of touches a little close to home with my co-host, we're going to look at the Helica single that came out 15th of December last year and features Duncan Bentley, a beautiful romantic ballad called Dear Disemboweled. This track, number one, production is top notch. It is exactly what you would imagine. It's slammy, chuggy, gory goodness that you would expect from the Helica brand. Production's top notch. The one thing that I personally really like about this track, a little bit different from what other slam tracks have, is a little bit more of a changing in pace, because it goes from frenetic fast blast beats to slow chug to really fast to even a slower chug, and it almost like devolves over the period of that. And as I said, with Duncan Bentley of Vulvodynia and Zavleg throwing in his vocals and actually hearing the lyrics that you put together, it was quite a treat for the ears. The music video, or snuff film, or whatever the hell you want to call it, and a lovely compilation of gory horror slasher flicks. Yeah, pretty much adds to the tone of the music. But yeah, really quality track. I'll be very curious as to getting your thoughts as to what you had in mind coming up with it and why you decided on Duncan for that track in particular.
Yeah, so I started writing almost like a straight death metal track, and then I realized that Helica is supposed to have some slam elements. So I had a bunch of riffs collected, and I was like, well, no one really does the frenetic and fast into like slow, sludgy, and heavy, you know. So I figured start off with a straight death metal riff, go into a slam, go into a breakdown, go into fast death metal, and like, why not? And then this was the first track that I wrote after a couple of other like singles that have already existed in previous releases but have been redone, and came back writing with renewed energy. So I figured I like the song, so I may as well get Duncan to feature on it. So that's that, and the rest is history, basically.
Oh yeah, and Duncan added a great layer to it in terms of his badass, almost deathcore style of guttural. So yeah, hopefully we will see that across all digital platforms in the near future. So we will keep you guys posted. Yeah, let's head this back to you, Alec. We're going to pull this back to South Africa for a few rounds. So why don't you kick it off with our first SA band, besides from yourself?
Yeah, so there's a little black metal act, raw black metal act called the Blacklight Council, or Blacklight Council, not to be confused with another South African band called Blacklight Council, which is like a more industrial metal, spelt slightly different. So all very confusing, but that's all good. This band has apparently been around for a little while, but they haven't really done much. So this is their first sort of release. The track is called Violence Divine. And like I said, it's very raw. It's got that lo-fi black metal cheese music video, you know, black and white and weird obscure colors. The one thing that I say will say differentiates it is it didn't start off with like a fast tremolo picked stereotypical black metal riff. It was groovy, and it felt almost like they were going for like a progressive black metal sort of feel. Like, I mean, Dimmu Borgir have done some songs with like weird, almost like dozy do barn dance riffs to start off the songs, and that sort of reminded me of that. But in terms of production, lo-fi, wouldn't be surprised if this came out, you know, of the Norwegian black metal scene back in the day.
Definitely. I actually don't know whereabout in South Africa they're based. Parts unknown, I imagine. Somewhere out in a forest, no doubt. But yeah, as you mentioned, Alec, very lo-fi, very raw, primitive style black metal. In my opinion, kind of has a groovy black and roll vibe, but the one thing that keeps the black metal is the repetition of the riffs. Even if it's a slow plodding riff that's just got these mid-tone, like almost mid-levels, like murmuring screams in the background, it kind of creates a bit of a hypnotic feel, as if you're walking through a forest. You get that cold, uncomfortable feel from it. It's not squeaky clean by any which it means. And I mean, yes, perhaps a little Spinal Tapper in a sense, but it fits in with the tone of the music, which I believe is the vibe that they're obviously trying to go for. So the video speaks well with the music, and the music, like you say, like dark and dreary, almost has a doom type feel in the slow ploddingness at points. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting group. Go look forward to seeing what they have. I'm very jealous of the bullet belts and gauntlets that they have. Hopefully one day we'll cross paths with them and we can find out where they source those. But yeah, good stuff from Blacklight Council, and their album Societal Existential Crisis is out now worldwide. So go check that out.
Awesome. The next track is something that sort of took me by surprise. It's a band called, or I think it's a solo act called The Sway of Mountains. The track is called Something That Here Dwells, also from SA. Yeah, I never expected instrumental black metal to be a thing, because generally it's the shrieks that sort of separate it, but you could still most definitely tell that this was a black metal band. I love the ominous soundscape that sort of started the track. And then went into the blistering black metal with the same chord progressions. I would have preferred like a nice transition into that. So instead of like a clean cold cut from like orchestration to black metal to fade one in while the other fades out, is kind of a very good tool that a lot of symphonic black metal bands use. But yeah, instrumentals are a very interesting choice.
Indeed. I kind of called it atmospheric black and death, just because of the tone that it had. I was almost expecting like a mid to low range guttural to come in about a minute in, and then it never came. And I was just like, all right, okay, well, let's see how this goes. And yeah, like you say, they have some interesting little glitches that they throw in, weird little soundscapes, and enough little atmospheric pads just sprinkled in that it gives it it gives the track a little bit more breath. And again, yeah, I'm not really acquainted with many, instrumental based, bands in this genre. So it was actually quite a breath of fresh air. The one thing I will actually compliment them on is how well all of the bits and pieces within the track sit in the mix. It is super clean, as well as like the drums really accentuating the guitar riffs. And as I say, just a little bit of those little synth sounds and the one or two little glitches at the beginning, a little bit at the middle and a bit at the end. It just really brings the track to life. As Alec said, maybe just a little bit of a work done before the actual guitar and the blast beat came in. Could have just held that note a little bit more. The drama was there, but really that's nitpicking small stuff, because I know if I ever heard this live like on a stage, it would probably blow me away. So yeah, kudos to the guys, or the dude, The Sway of Mountains. Yeah, the album, All the Colors Stain the Light. It's available also across all platforms. We'll include a link over here. So, yeah.
So this next band is a monomath from Secunda. They guys that I've played tons of shows with. I really dig the intro of this track. I really dig the vocals. But yeah, they're basically the monomath of South Africa, and I know that they would love me saying that. The only thing that I could be nitpicky on is the clarity of the mix. You know, so I feel they needed just a little bit of clarity in there to remove some of the muddiness. Maybe like the mix maybe is okay, but the master needed a little bit of work. But otherwise, it's a power track. You can hear that low tuning, the great harmonies of the guitars. It's the stereotypical monomath, basically.
Yeah. This track, Woven Fate by Fenris Wolf, quality track. It kind of assimilates a bit of groove metal and a lot of death metal. As Alec mentioned, we got low gutturals, but audible in the sense that you can actually hear what he's actually singing, which is always a breath of fresh air in that sense. The one thing I found quite refreshing in this particular track was near the end when the vocalist goes and takes the vocals to that high mid-tone level, but almost like Travis of Cattle Decapitation, that weird, almost goblin-esque type murmur, which I want to try it, but I'm going to just make myself look like a tit, so I'm not going to do it. But anybody that's heard the new Cattle Decapitation album will know the parts that I'm talking about, which I thought was quite refreshing for that band, because again, very powerful, almost like a monomath styles in the groove and the hardness. And my only problem with it was essentially the vocals being a little bit too front in the mix. I didn't really think had it just been brought back a little bit and the guitars brought out a little bit more forward to accentuate the drums that were like just pumping and keeping that consistent pace the whole time, I think the track overall would have sounded a lot more dynamic. But I can't fault it. It's got all the meat and potatoes of a good live track that you'll just have a great time listening to. So another killer one from the dudes from Secunda. So yeah, keep it going, guys. We'll keep listening.
So the next track is actually by two bands, and they dudes from a place that used to be called PE, and I will not even try to pronounce what it's now named. So they are also obviously South Africans. They both hardcore bands, and they've got this split EP now out on, I think, one of the guys that part of the band's record label called Dire Noise. It's Ghast and Boiling Point. We've spoken to both of those bands on the chat. I love the 8-string tuning in this the song, but I felt like they could have lent into it a bit more. Like I feel like a lot of the tone on the guitar was pushed towards more the treble and mid-range instead of the bass, which is cool. I mean, that's just a preference thing. The vocal range is really crazy on this track. There's some highs that remind me of Mitch Lucker from Suicide Silence. And that breakdown with all the discordant chords, such power. But yeah, like I think if they'd lent into the bassiness of that 8-string, it would have shattered skulls.
Yeah, definitely a brutal one. That is the track Decay. Now, my first impression, obviously knowing both Ghast and Boiling Point, and knowing that they're hardcore / grindcore, whichever real way you want to kind of break it down, they're noisy and heavy. When I saw the initial track length of this being, I believe, 5.5 minutes, like I thought this was their Pink Floyd Shine On You Crazy Diamond. This is like the longest essentially hardcore track that I've heard. But then when I started listening to it, the one thing I noticed is that it goes through many ups and downs, a lot of peaks and valleys in this track. The one thing that I do know via this EP is that it was a complete like 50-50 combined effort between the band. So all the members are kind of working together on all the tracks, which is what Alec would explain with the balance between like 6-string and 8-string guitar and the almost juxtaposition between the gutturals and the high-end screeches and stuff. It really, the track goes through lots of ups and downs, but there isn't really a point in the track that lets you breathe in any which way that it goes in. It's the most extreme in that manner. So obviously they were trying to keep the ethos of hardcore alive in this while still kind of broadening their musical palette, I feel. And you can really hear that in this. This is a true split in every which sense of the word, in my opinion. A complete balance of styles and different personalities coming together to create something completely different from either one of them. So yeah, kudos to the guys from Ghast and Boiling Point, from the lovely town of formerly known as PE.
Yeah. We're going to take it out of South Africa just for one track now. We're going to go up to Algeria. This band is called Silent Obsession, and the track is Against the Process. Now, I found this very interesting. They classify themselves as technical death metal. And I kind of agree in the same sense that death might have been considered technical death metal, but it's not necrophagist, it's not Archspire. For me, it's more an old school death metal band with some thrashy riffs, some fast riffs, some technical parts, sure, but to me, basically straight up death metal. When the vocalist started, I almost thought maybe it's a lady. It sort of reminded me of Angela Gosal, just the mid-range vocal style, which isn't an insult. It's just you can hear these things because we built differently. Please don't cancel us. But then when they went low, the vocalist, I got a hint of Chris Barnes, the greatest death metal vocalist. If you guys have seen all the drama, but yeah, I caught a little hint of Chris Barnes in there. But yeah, I thought the track was reasonably put together. It had an old school sound, an old school feel, old school production. And I think if that's what they were going for, then they hit it out the park.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward meat and potato in what I would have called a black and thrash track. In my opinion, in the sense, maybe it's considered tech death in Algeria, but you know, like out here in the rest of Africa and the world, like it definitely has a more catchy hook orientation to it, which is more, in my mind, thrash orientated. The guttural vocals obviously being a slightly more towards the death metal side. I guess musically you would say maybe on the lines of like a Possessed or something like that, you know, something that has old school death metal sensibilities, but you definitely can tell these guys listen to Slayer and Overkill and those guys growing up as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a straightforward track. It's 3 minutes. It's got 2 or 3 catchy hooks in it, and a nice little solo. Production on the drums sounds pretty damn decent. Yeah, I can't really fault this. I mean, it's commendable to anybody out in those parts of Africa to be venturing off into such a micro genre out there. So, kudos to the guys, and yeah, just keep going and we will keep on listening. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
definitely. The next track, it's back in the SA again. It's in Lyle's hometown or home city, so to speak. We've had this guy on the chat. He's a nice gent. Kevin Rule's band With Dawn, and the track is called The Disowned. I mean, how I've heard Kevin describe With Dawn is progressive new metalcore, which is kind of a good way to describe it. It's got the groove of new metal, the 7-string drop A tuning of new metal, but the cleans of metalcore. But we're not talking like boy band metalcore. We're talking like Killswitch Engage style metalcore, where the dudes are still dudes. They're not like models that are before we go down that rabbit hole, I'll stop. But yeah, I really like this track. I like the piano stabs, so to speak, in the beginning, and the ambience. Although I felt like after a minute and a half, it was a bit dragging to me. I would have, and I also would have preferred a transition to the track, because it ended in silence, and then the main track sort of started. With, as usual with Kevin's stuff, both the clean vocals and the harsh on point. The production is good. I think they still use Mike Kubik's studio down in Cape Town. But yeah, like overall a good track,
Yeah, the Disowned, like when I heard it, the initial feel, because this track clocks in at 6.5 minutes, so it's an epic one. As Alec mentioned, it takes about a minute and a half, maybe close to 2 minutes before it kicks in. And when it kicks in with what is actually the chorus. So you're immediately like hit with this very wide open, clean, broad, almost symphonic type chorus. You could almost sing along to it. It's got that type of beauty to it. But then when you hear the grit to complement the clean that Kevin brings, it just adds such a beautiful, like, full feel to it. Obviously, all like compounded by the addition of all these orchestrations that they've added. I do agree. I think it took a little bit longer to kick in with the slow piano intro, but it does set the tone. From what I read about this track, it was kind of written during the most depressing point in lockdown, and it's supposed to be like an homage or something to not for us as a people not to give up and not to be knocked down by this. So knowing that and then going and listening to the music, it almost gives you that goosebump type feel, because it's so dramatic. It's a wall of sound in a completely different manner. But yeah, production's top notch. Like I wouldn't like to feed Kevin's ego too much, but With Dawn is quickly becoming one of my favorite bands in South Africa. So yeah. Keep rocking, Kev. Keep shredding it and making those squealing sounds. Good stuff. Well impressed. Cape Town represent.
Yeah. Now, this next band is one of the very, very few industrial sort of bands that we have in this country. And I mean, for me, it was one step away from like cybergoth, EBM, style music, bands like now I've gone blank. But
yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Like my gut feel with this band was the Monty Python, and now for something completely different, because this is the one act within our entire list that probably goes against everything that is normal and metal, and probably like dice more into the electro, like EBM noise, like side of life, even more abstract than what Igor actually can be in a sense. But yeah, definitely the most interesting stuff I'd heard. A lot of weird, disjointed sounds, very raw guitar. It sounds like almost every one of the effects that are being used in the percussion that they recorded themselves. Like it literally sounds like somebody is hitting the bottom of a paint tin with a spoon, and they were like, "That's the tom, that's the tom," and we're just going to put it there, and we're just going to have it repeat like tuck 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 tuck, and just that's going to be your rhythm. That's going to be your beat, and have this weird, almost In Misery. It reminds me a lot of that In Misery type style, that somber, introspective, depressive type of murmuring, gothic type singing. It's a bit of a weird type of track. It's definitely out there. It takes a concentrated listen to focus on and actually try to see what they're trying to do with it. But interesting stuff. I believe they're based in Joburg, if I'm correct.
Maybe. I have no idea. All I know is that they remind me of some German bands, namely Centron and Terra Frequens, which are quite weird industrial goth metal hybrids. But yeah, very different to everything else on the list. Just like this next act, actually. These guys have played with tons of times. They're a band called Armageddon, and it's the title track of their latest EP called Detonator. They're also from Joburg here. And all I can say is that the old school thrash has been brought. Starts off with a blistering solo. And although I've never really been a massive fan of those high thrashy vocals, these are the perfect thrash vocals, you know. It kind of reminds me of a band called Bonded by Blood. It's the Huey, Louie, and Dewey of metal vocals.
Definitely. I mean, these guys have been waving the thrash banner for years up in Joburg. I've kind of always said they have a little bit of thrash and a little bit of speed metal, just because of the vocal range being able to hit that high, searing high note, which is like, it's awe-inspiring. But this track in particular, it has all the meat and potatoes of a classic thrash metal tune. It reminds me a lot, in fact, of the formula of what Hit the Lights by Metallica actually has. It's got always three parts, three catchy guitar riffs, and they just jump between them. It's all complemented by a solid backbeat with the drums and searing vocals, and not to forget the overlying gang chants that they keep doing. All of those like big like detonator chants, can't go wrong with it. I couldn't think of a better title track for a release, you know. Like the name, the vibe, it really, if you guys are into the old school thrash metal vibes, besides from Hulver out here in Cape Town, yeah, Armageddon in Joburg are indeed like one of the flag bearers. So yeah, go check out their EP. It is blistering, long time coming, and yeah, go check this track Detonator also, because it rocks hard. So yeah, good stuff.
Definitely purest of thrash. yeah, this next band is from Bloemfontein. I heard them years ago, and so I had a bit of a predisposition. I assumed going into this track that I was going to be treated to a metalcore boy bandy style track, but it turns out they've changed their sort of flavor to be more in line with a Shadow of Intent or a Lorna Shore in this blackened symphonic deathcore. This band is called Third World Party. The track is called Blood Moon of Hecate. Well, like I said, it had a black metal style intro. Vocals really cool, lots of range to it, from that like low guttural deathcore vocal to the snarly zombie style vocal that is prevalent in bands like Lorna Shore. My only complaint is that with bands that have symphonic deathcore, the production has to be 100% clean. Like, not clean as in non-distorted guitars, but you know it when you hear it. And for me, the production on the track was a little raw for my liking, especially if you're trying to compete with the bands that I've already mentioned.
Indeed. I mean, like right off the bat when I heard it, and not actually ever hearing this band prior, I say this with all due respect, I kind of got a little bit of a Spectral Realm feel from them. But within 1 minute of that, going into that low, like going from a blast beat symphonic black metal with searing vocals down to that low gurgling guttural deathcore style, it's an adventurous track because they're trying to blend two sounds together. And again, like Alec mentioned, if you're going to do that, it needs to be done with clinical precision, I should say. Everything, all the instrumentation, everything needs to be mastered and maxed, like, and equalized perfectly. And with something like this, where you've got such a contrast in styles, where you're going from the high searing like symphonic to the low guttural and chugging slow discorded riffs, it's a line you got to tread very lightly. That being said, it was a breath of fresh air. Did not think that the track was going to go the route that it does, and I always am excited when a band can challenge my ears and, you know, take me on a different journey, because it definitely didn't end the way it started. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more of what they do. And yeah, I mean, obviously they're one of the few bands in this country that's kind of tethering this line. So we will wait and see what they do in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the next band we're going to review is a band that's actually really great live. They sort of came out of nowhere and took at least the Johannesburg market by storm. It's a band called Human Nebula. It's got some deathcore, it's got some metalcore, it's got some tech death in it. And this track is called Police Brutality, and it actually has a ton of local artists collaborating on it. I think the message of the song is quite interesting, you know, like showing off police brutality. My favorite moment in the track is definitely Luandile's vocals, those gutturals just taking the track out of nowhere, you know, like everybody's like on a certain level in terms of style, and then Luandile comes out of nowhere and just gives it proper deathcore, slammy, gurgly, you know. And for me that was like a really breath of fresh air into the track. I am not one of these metal elitists that don't like cleans, but I don't like that style of clean. I felt it was very overproduced. It didn't feel like necessarily that like a guy was singing it when the guy was doing the cleans. And that might seem harsh, and I say it with all due respect, because I'm sure I've never heard that song live, and I'm sure the guy's probably talented enough to pull it off. But generally, I associate that style with vocalists that can't pull it off. And you listen to this stellar produced album, and then you see live footage, and it's a trash fire. And I mean, this is not just a problem with metalcore, so to speak. I've seen melodic death metal bands where I can't believe they go on stage that badly prepared in terms of the clean vocals. Like the rest of the track is stellar, and then yeah. But let's not go down the whole rabbit hole of clean vocals in metal. I think the song was pretty good. The clean vocals just took me away from it.
And I think just to tie the clean vocal part up like with a pretty bow, if you will, the fact that they let it run over two different clean vocalists over two verses, I felt did kind of pull the track away from the initial intensity. Because again, this is a track that sits in about 6.5 minutes. It's rather a hodgepodge of mixed genres, trying to facilitate a lot of different styles. As Alec mentioned, you've got the Chris Xenopoulos even adding a guitar solo, which almost takes the track into a jazz fusion element with his solo work, and then back into like the deathcore vibe. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. I would say that for the most part, the track is a solid track. Production-wise, I can't really fault it. Whoever is the engineer that recorded it, kudos to them, because it's a fat track. It's just like Alex said, sometimes they're clean vocals that come in and they can be there to accentuate the track, or they can be there to kind of take the track in another direction. Now, if you're somebody like us, maybe that other direction in this particular track, maybe a bit of a reassessment. But for the most part, it's a solid track, and it's a great representation of the wide variety of music and vocal stylings and guitar stylings that we have coming out of this country. So yeah, salute to Human Nebula. Hopefully we get them out here in Cape Town soon. We'll see.
I'm sure you will. They're the kind of band that will have enough of a following that when you next have a Summerfest or Winterfest, if ever again a live one, they would be a good act to come down. Yeah, I think I can end off my feedback with a little bit of a compliment. The musicianship is top notch. Even their internal lead guitarists, the solos like completely blow my mind. It's some of the best work in the country. So take that as my ending statement for Human Nebula. The next track is by a band we've also interviewed before, Truth Decayed.
Up in Durban,
yeah.
Our first Durban.
And it's a track called PTSD. I really like the scream in the beginning, like weird thrash, like it's usually associated with like a Slayer sort of style scream. It's not like harsh. It's like you can hear there's like a real emotion behind it. It's not heavy for the sake of heaviness or violent for the sake of violence, you know. There's emotion behind it. Yeah, the rest of the track is very shouty thrash vocals, very fantastic instrumentation. I really liked, there was in the breakdown, they had this nice bend on the whammy to like bring all the strings of the guitar down, and made this really cool wall of sound effect, which I thought was a really good, interesting layer to add in. And I would label the production as adequate. Like, it got the job done. I'm not going to say it's the best production I've ever heard, but it's certainly not the worst I've ever heard, and it's not the worst on this list.
Definitely. I mean, this is a band that although they're considered thrash, they definitely have one foot in the heavy metal, the traditional heavy metal background. This particular track, as we've been watching the evolution of Truth Decayed, you can definitely hear Reno. You can hear his voice like has really gone to the next level. He's pushing it a lot harder, a lot more aggressive, and I think you can feel the pain in the lyrics. You can feel the aggression, like he's yelling at you, which is, I think, some of the key elements when it comes to thrash. It doesn't necessarily have to be clean and hit the perfect notes. It just needs to get the message across. And I feel like this track in particular, as opposed to previous ones that we've reviewed from them, number one, it showcases Reno's vocal stylings a lot more to an area that I think suits his vocal capabilities, and also suits his musicianship in terms of having, like you say, having that little bit of a breakdown, going into that nice epic lead and guitar solo. You can just tell that's where he shines, and the whole band kind of gels with that. But yeah, for the most part, production is getting a lot better. So I mean, really, that's all you can really hope for, to get better as an artist and as a band. So with that in mind, from a year ago of us being a bit harsh on their debut, you know, they've come a long way since then. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the boys out in Durban come up with next.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the list for this week, hey? I think our next video will probably feature a lot more of the African metal bands. There's some things that I'm really interested in, some bands from Morocco and from Kenya. I think it's going to be really cool to venture more into the north of Africa. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a cool thing. Otherwise, definitely. Are you happy to say that we've done a great chat this week?
I think we made it through kicking and screaming, you know, vocals with the exception. But yeah, like, I'm feeling good about it. This is obviously part one of our part two. We dipped our toes a little bit in African metal. Hopefully we've made some of our SA peers a little bit happy with reviewing some of our cherry-picked selections. There obviously was a lot more music out there. So for any of the other releases, go check out HeavyHops. We will include the link in the description. They have a full list of all the African bands with all the links to their social media and all the links to the releases. Go check it out. You won't be disappointed. You want to start dipping into African metal, that's the place. So yeah, I'm feeling good about this week, Alec. How about you? What do you say? Are we done for this week?
Yes, I think I would just like to highlight a second resource for if you're interested in African metal, say you're abroad or you're in South Africa or somewhere in Africa. If you're interested in African metal, there's a Facebook page called Surprise, Surprise African Metal. It's African metal. And they do weekly top 10s as well as a monthly top 20. And they great dudes. You can submit, as a band, you can submit your music to them. They will give you feedback. They will add you to charts if they like their music, the music. So yeah, it's also a second great resource that has been around for a very, very long time. So yeah, I think that's it for this week. It's been great hanging out in a low stress environment, in like just shooting the shit with Lyle. So it's been good.
Yeah. Nothing stressful about that, I guess, you know. Let's do it again next week, shall we, Alec?
We shall.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That helps. As Alec and myself said, we will be back same time, same place on the interweb to dip our toes more into African metal. So yeah, keep listening, keep supporting. Hopefully this pandemic hoo-ha will be over soon enough. Awesome, guys. Have a wicked week ahead. We'll see you soon.
Peace.